Hi, my name is Hannah. Welcome to my channel, Savage Reads. Today I am going to film one of the best videos of the year. I am going to talk about my very favorite fiction books that I read in the year of 2025. So, I will not be going through my nonfiction reads, that will be the next one, but let's talk about some of the amazing novels that I have read that have moved me, changed my perspective, made me a better person. I'm really excited to get into some of these. So let's just get started. Let's start with one of my first 5-star reads of the year, and this was Butter by Asako Yuzuki. This book has our female gourmet cook and serial killer and the journalist who wants to get close to her. And you really get the most beautiful descriptions of food. I had to rate this 5 stars because not only did I enjoy the story and find it heartwarming and interesting, but just how it changed my actual life. The enjoyment I get actually eating butter that I got after reading this book, it was so worth it. And just the descriptions just remind me to enjoy the beautiful, tasty foods, and it just had so many great discussions that you could have about feminism and family, and I think there were really great things, but what will stick with me is just that really unabashed love of food, and I adored reading this book. Now, this next book was The Violin Conspiracy by Brendan Slocumb, and this is a mystery, and there is a violin, and there is a struggling Black musician, and he encounters an amazing violin, and I enjoyed kind of getting sucked into that world of music. I played the violin for a lot of my growing up, and it was really great to get back into that, but also to have these really in-depth discussions about racism and institutions that are in place that put people down. And I just think that it was really well done, and the mystery was really compelling. And so this was a great one if you want something that you can't put down, but also makes you really love thinking about music. And that is something that Brendan Slocumb does well, is that description and that love of music that you can tell he has pouring through this book. So I really liked the book for that. This next book was The Reformatory by Tananarive Due. This is talking about historical issues with segregation, this boys' reformatory school, but we also get a very classic ghost story, and I think it came together really meaningfully, and I was very much hooked with this one. So I think it had a lot of heart, a lot of real issues that it talked about, and a plot that kept you gripped. This next book was Everybody's Son by Thrity, Umrigar, and this is a story of a young boy whose mother is arrested and he is raised by a white family. And you get some of that push and pull between different lives and cultures that he deals with, and some of the secrets that people have kept from him. What I liked about this book is it explored some really interesting ideas, but also was really great at going into characters. And so you really feel like, although you very strongly disagree with some of the decisions that these characters have made, you understand where they were coming from, and you feel like you know what it's like to be in their head, even when they make horrible decisions. And so this was just really well done, that deep dive into characters as well as a plot that is interesting. I think this was just an excellent read. I read the book My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante, and this book is exploring the friendship between two women over the span of their early lives. I understand that this is a series, but for some reason I loved how it ended. I thought that some of the ambiguity was just perfect, and so I haven't wanted to go back and read the rest of the series. So if you've read the series and you think I'm making a mistake, let me know, but I thought this one was just excellent how it was. Some people have called it the Italian Anne of Green Gables, and I can see that as in a classic story of girls and their friendships, but I think this was a very unique story and such a strong setting where you really feel like you are in Naples and you understand what is going on. So I really enjoyed this one. For a book that just broke my heart, Loved and Missed by Susan Boyt. This is a woman who has a daughter who is addicted to drugs, and just all of her efforts to try to reach out to her daughter seem to fail. And it is so affirming to see the love that Ruth has for her daughter, but at the same time, it is heartbreaking to see all the missteps and the misconnections and the tries to love someone but miss at the same time. And I thought this was a really beautiful book and something that so many people could relate to in their lives. And so I highly recommend this one. It was beautiful. It will probably bring a tear to your eye at some point. I finally read Babel by R.F. Kuang this year, and I don't know why I didn't read it sooner. It is a fantasy land that looks very similar to ours, where words have actual power. And this was so good. I loved talking about some of the power that is behind words and where they come from, and looking at some of the politics with this. And there were just so many good things about this. It makes me want to read some of the author's other work. If you have a recommendation for another book I should read by this author, let me know, because this was just really, really good. It was one of those that it's long, it's detailed, it's intricate, but you feel like you're a part of something when you're in it. You feel like this is the epic book that we should all have been reading all along. This is the fantasy world that we need to get lost in. It doesn't feel like a passing fancy. It feels so epic. I just really, really liked it. I thought some of the messaging was really interesting. I think there's a lot to pick apart in there. And I just think the world building was very interesting, and it was just very believable for me. I haven't been reading a ton of fantasy lately, and this made me question all of my life decisions, because why am I not reading fantasy all the time? If they were this good, I would be reading fantasy all the time. This was just fantastic. Now, I read out loud to my daughters the book Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, and this is a classic for a reason. There are just so many ways you can pick this book apart in a good way. Look through, sift through, find something new each time you pick it up. And I was shocked at just how accessible this book was. My 5-year-old really enjoyed this book, found it exciting, because there is that mystery element. It's not just, okay, we have a bunch of rich people chatting with each other. Where is the plot for a younger reader? There's something to grab onto. So I think that this is such a great book for so many ages, and I'm really glad that I was able to revisit this. It has been one of my favorite books for so long, but it has been a long time since I have reread it, and I was so glad I could share this with my daughters. And I love having a classic that has a female protagonist that I feel like is someone worth relating to. This next book is a little bit younger. It's a young adult, middle grade kind of book, and it is Everything Sad Is Untrue by Daniel Nayeri. And this is a really beautiful story about an immigrant boy trying to find his place and finding strength through stories and telling stories from his home, of his family, of his history. And I think that the way that stories were woven together in this was really beautiful and very powerful. And I am so glad that this kind of book is being written for younger audiences, because it's something that as an adult I thought was well done and I enjoyed it and it was great. If it was just written towards me, great. But I love that it is a book that is accessible to many ages and well done. I think when you look at books for younger readers, you can fall into either they are meaningless or they are preaching a moral, and you don't get always that beautiful writing and that beautiful storytelling with real meaning and feeling behind it. And I think this book had that. So I really do recommend it. This was lovely, and I would definitely have my girls read this book. So I read the book Martyr by Kaveh Akbar, and I had such a great time reading this. There is that immigrant searching for meaning, trying to understand death and life, and it was at times really funny and a lot of times really moving. And I think some of the reason that I really enjoyed this book is I did do it as a buddy read with Tiffany at Towering TBR, and this was just really great. There were a lot of layers and the writing was really beautiful. And I think it gives you a lot to hold on to when you are seeking out what actually brings meaning and joy to your own life. Now, another classic book that I read out loud to my daughters is The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde. And this is a short read, but there's a reason it has some staying power. It is funny, witty, and has some interesting criticisms of the upper classes. And this book is just delightful. It is a play, it is fun, and I had fun reading it out loud to my girls and then watching the movie with Colin Firth and Reese Witherspoon and everyone. It's just delightful. So pick this one up. It will not take you long to get through, and it is so worth a read. On the note of what I've read to my daughters, for 5-star series, Garth Nix does not lead you astray. We read the Abhorsen series, which has Sabriel Lyriel Abhorsen. There are some other books in the series as well. I think the trilogy is really great. The other ones are fine, and I know my daughter enjoys them. We also read the Keys to the Kingdom series, and that was just awesome. It was fun for all ages. We all had fun. This was so engaging. If you want a good middle grade book series that everyone is excited to read, from my 5-year-old to my husband, all of us read all of these books. Any part of the books that my husband would miss, he would go read on his own because he didn't want to miss out either. If you want fantastic fantasy, this is what you should read. The Keys to the Kingdom series by Garth Nix. I love the Abhorsen series. I think it's a great trilogy on its own. But this, with all 7 books, was just so engaging, so fun, a wonderful time to read out loud. One of my very favorite read aloud experiences I've had with my daughters because of just how excited they were. It's so fun to have a book where your kids are saying, "Oh, Mom, please, can we not watch a movie? Could we just read our book? Could we read one more chapter? Hey, Mom, could we read while we eat lunch? Could we read it this morning before we go to school? We just want to know what happens next." How fun is that? It was a delightful experience. Highly recommend if you have kids, and even if you don't. I think this series is just fantastic for all ages. Another fantastic read was Ghost Girl Banana by Wharton, and this is one of those generational family sagas. We have a woman who leaves Hong Kong to become a nurse in London, and then we have her children going back to Hong Kong to receive a mysterious inheritance, and you learn about both things. And I think this was a really interesting look at some of the difficulties that they had to overcome and the family ties, and it had a compelling enough mystery that I just really enjoyed this. I do highly recommend it. It just was a very heartfelt read. As I filmed this video, I realized I have read out loud so many books this year to my children. We read out loud The Count of Monte Cristo, and was it good? Yes, this book is excellent. I highly recommend it. It was really good. It has its moments where, as an adult, reading it again, I do question if some of the morals were quite as successful as the author was trying to make them, and if the author made all the right decisions. But you know what? This book is a classic for a reason. My 9-year-old loved this book. This probably is not a great one for your 5-year-old. My 5-year-old did not care about this book in the slightest, but my 9-year-old loved it. And not only did she love it when I read it out loud off of my Kindle app, she loved it so much she wanted this book for Christmas. So she is halfway through reading it again, and It is such a good classic tale with all the interesting morals, discussion points, adventure, and I think that there is a little bit of something for everyone in this book. I did listen to Harriet Tubman live in concert by Bob the Drag Queen, and this was just a really beautiful love letter to Harriet Tubman and her contemporaries and what they have done for society. It was just lovely. I recommend listening to it. It was fantastic, and it's almost hard to say that I'm putting this in the fiction book. Of course it's fiction. Harriet Tubman coming to modern day and producing a show about her story is not factual, but many of the stories she told were true, and I feel like I learned a lot about Harriet Tubman, and she just felt so much more humanized, and she just felt so much more real, and I really loved this book, and how much you can tell that the author loves Harriet Tubman. It really looks up to her and finds strength through her story and her life, and you can really feel that through this book. So I really loved it. My last book I'm going to talk about is Immaculate Conception by Ling Huang. This is following two women at art school and their friendship starting there and going forward. There is a big sci-fi element in this book with connecting their brains and all sorts of weird things, but really it's just this exploration of jealousy, female friendship, artistic expression, and it was really beautifully done. I think the science fiction elements were interesting, but were really just plot devices to really explore these ideas. And I thought that it was really interesting. Is it frustrating at times? Does it make you feel awful and uncomfortable sometimes? Yes, but it's supposed to. You're supposed to feel those feelings. It's that feeling of, oh, why is she doing this? That's not right. She can't do this. Oh no, just wanting to fix it. And this book is marked as horror, but I think the horror is just being trapped in the main character's head and having to live with her decisions. I think getting into it thinking, okay, a sci-fi horror book, it's not going to be something that moves me on an emotional level, but this definitely did. And those are some of my very favorite books that I read in 2025, favorite fiction at least. I will be back with my nonfiction wrap up. And if you have thoughts on these books, or if you have a favorite book from 2025, let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you all on the next one.